Hey, everybody, welcome back to the 24th episode, I think, of Taps and Patience. Uh, Sorry, I panicked there because I realized I didn't remember the number. But my name is AJ with Design the Everything here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. Hi, Harrison. How you doing?
I'm doing good this evening. How are you doing?
Other than panicking at not remember the number, pretty good.
Well, that's good. Did you have a good week last week?
I did. I don't remember what I did, but it wasn't bad.
Well, that's always a plus. I had a nice
Oh,
big weekend away with the family and the extended family, so that was a
awesome.
lot of fun. hmm We went to about 2 hours away to a town called Branson,
Okay.
which is a big vacation spot, but it's the off season, and so we were able to
Mm.
rent like a massive house, like a 3-story house with like 20 rooms. And a normal family would probably kill themselves if they did that with all their extended family, but
Yeah.
we're weird. And so I had my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles and cousins and their kids. And I mean, we were just packed in there like crazy. And we just had a lot of fun hanging out, playing games. We had a giant puzzle that we almost got put together, and all sorts of stuff. It was just a ton of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like a blast.
Yeah, it was. So, but let's see here. And
Yeah, I remembered what I did last week.
oh, okay. What you do?
So I did some restocking of my Etsy store, which I need to do for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I started working on some finishing tests, which is a topic we should probably talk about after this.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked on my website. That's what last week was.
Ooh, you worked on your website. I'm gonna
I
have to
did
check
work on
this
my
out.
website.
Okay, so what'd you do on your website? Let's start there because I'm gonna look it up while you're telling me about it.
So for the last month or two, designtheeverything.com has been broken. The link just did not work, and I could never really figure out why. It was supposed to be a redirect to betterkeychains.com, which hosted my Etsy website. But I had started working on redoing designtheeverything.com, I don't know, a month or two ago, and that redirect broke. So anyway, I finished up my Shopify website, which is designtheeverything.com, and I don't know, I have the store there. You guys can go look at it if you're interested, but it looks very design the everythingy. It looks very nice. And I'm going to shut down my pattern website, my Etsy website, which is betterkeychains.com. And Better Keychains will just redirect to designtheeverything.com.
I like it. This looks really nice and clean.
Thank you.
I'm
It
glad to.
wasn't too bad to get set up. I did not use Scott for this one, which may have been a mistake because I spent a long time struggling through like some of the simple things. Um, like the thing. So right now, I basically have two shops. Actually, I have three different shops on my website. There is the normal shop that normal people use. Then there is a wholesale shop, and then there is a Patreons only shop. The latter two are both empty right now, but I'll get that fixed. But it took me forever to figure out how to differentiate those. And it was just like me not understanding how Shopify worked. But 6 hours later, and now they are actually different shops.
Well, it looks really good. I like it a lot.
Thank you.
So good job.
Thanks.
As someone who has struggled with website design myself, I'm very impressed.
Yeah. Shopify makes it
So
pretty easy, at least to get your initial design set up. Some of these little details, like adding, it took me probably an hour today to figure out how to assign weights to different items.
hmm
I couldn't figure out how to do that. It took me forever. But like actually putting together your store and all the different pages is pretty quick.
Yeah, from a tools perspective, it does a really good job. My problem is that anytime I try to design a website, it always looks like crap. So
Your problem is you don't have a well-defined brand.
yeah, that's
Like,
part. Well, it's that's part of
what's your
it, but the
brand
other,
font? What's your brand colors? What is the goal of your website?
yeah, I guess there's a little bit of that, but also the other part of the problem is that um, I have too many different ideas for how things need to look, and it's really hard to. Well, I guess it kind of does come back to the whole brand thing. If I had a brand thing that was defined, I guess that would be less difficult. So I guess, yeah, that's probably what you said is probably pretty accurate there.
Yeah, it
So
definitely helps when you have an idea of what you're like. Having a well-defined brand and well-defined branding just keeps you from needing to make a million choices when you're doing your website. Like, it really simplifies down
yeah,
the choices you have to make.
yeah, yeah, that's true. It does. Um, and I did have a good conversation with Weston this week about we really want to start pushing our store more, and we want to get some more products out there because
Mm-hmm.
we've seen a drastic drop on our Etsy account this last month or this last few weeks. And it's partly because we're starting to get low inventories and haven't had time to fill them back up. And I think that's part of it. And then the other part is we haven't been releasing as many new products as we have in the past. And so I really want to get back on that for a little bit and try to get some new stuff developed and in stock. So I think that would help because for a while we were selling like crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and we were seeing crazy growth. But I think as soon as we started getting lower inventory counts of things, Etsy started pushing it less and less, which means less sales. So
And then you have the snowball effect where you lose momentum, which means even less sales. Yeah.
I think keeping having stuff in stock all the time and never letting it actually run out of stock plays a huge factor in how well you're promoted. So
I think there's also something to be said for having, and this is me basically regurgitating what Fidget Thing says, is have some things that are cheap, have some things that are really expensive, and then have the things that people are actually going to buy be in between. So
yeah,
I really want to introduce some more, low budget things, under $10 or whatever
yeah,
that can kind of help give me momentum. And then I can make money off of the mid tier things.
yeah. I want to do that as well, which um, kind of happened to me today, actually. If I'm honest, did you look
Oh,
through some of your
yeah, I
sales
saw your
today?
orders.
So your video came out, and I happened to be in the middle of something that had my computer tied up, and so I just pulled out your video on my phone and watched it, and you did a great job on that, and it was really entertaining. And while I was watching it, I was like, I keep saying I want to make something to fix my carabiner, but I honestly don't have the time right now. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
just want something to fix it because it flew off my keychain twice this morning.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna order this. And then I ordered it. I put it in my cart, and I'm like, shipping's more expensive than this. I was like, I
I
really,
know.
I really want like to see what else you got in your store, and I saw the top and the coin holder, and I was like, those are both things that like I would like to do my own version at some point, and I just want to get a couple. Like I've never bought these from anyone else, and so I just want to get a couple in hand. And so I went through and I was like, well, I want the budget top, and then I was like, well, the other top looks a little bit nicer, so I increased my price on that. And anyways, I ended up spending a lot more than I had planned, but I was still happy to do it, and I'm excited and looking forward to seeing them come in.
Well, I appreciate your order. Though now I have this little bit of a problem where I don't have a powder coated coin stand on hand, and my powder coating booth is torn apart. I thought I didn't think about taking that off of my website or taking out the inventory, but I'll make do somehow.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you need to say it shipped and then ship it later, that's okay.
Okay,
I understand.
I
So
think I
whatever
actually do
whatever.
have a longer lead time on it. Yeah, I do. It says ship by March 1st.
Okay, okay, then you should be good.
But
So.
yeah, I have all of the stands machined,
Hmm.
but I don't have them coded yet because my booth is all torn apart. Though it has made some really big progress in the last couple of days. It has walls with plywood on it, and the outside walls are just plywood. The inside walls, like inside the booth, are plywall with a plastic over it. It has all the electrical in, which was quite a bit because there's a combination of a bunch of outlets and then some switched outlets. It has air. It basically just needs some like miscellaneous trim, and there are 2 windows in the side of the booth, like so you can look out of the booth and the booth doesn't feel quite as tiny.
Hmm.
Those need to be put in, and that's pretty much it. It should be done in just a couple days.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. That's exciting.
Oh, and the lights for powder coating that go vertically on the side, the ones
Hmm.
that just kind of get rid of shadows, those are not in yet. But
And you might have mentioned this already because I am really bad about forgetting things. But is this going to be like have a door that's going to enclose it? Like, is it completely self-contained, or is it going to have an open back?
it will have one of those hanging curtain door things, like the plastic strips
Okay,
you'd see in a
yeah.
warehouse.
Oh, yeah. You did mention that, so I just couldn't remember.
It'll have those
So,
on the back, and then it has a big blower unit that sits kind of right under where you're powder coating with a filter on it. And so
hmm
the powder coat and air gets sucked there and shot out a window. Then there is a filter not directly above where you stand in powder coat, but kind of up on the wall next to it. And so there
hmm
should be a consistent down, almost straight downdraft. It'll be kind of a diagonal downdraft, but we'll have a downdraft coming in to keep the powder spread nice and even and predictable.
that'll be
And
good.
then there'll probably be some air that comes in from behind because the blower unit is pretty intense.
That's good. That's super exciting.
Yeah,
So,
I'm excited to get that up and running.
so I saw you got your coins. Um, Speaking of some other things, your coin set up on Instagram. Are you running
Yes,
production? Are you running production on those?
I'm officially in production. The first batch finished about an hour ago, a little bit before we got on here.
Hmm.
And actually, the second batch finished while we were on here, or at least one op of the second half. It took me a lot of experimenting to get those tool paths where I wanted them, and I broke a lot of end mills, like a
Oh
lot of end
no.
mills while doing experiments. But I started with Lakeshore Carbide end mills, and
Hmm.
they were fine, but they didn't do so well with the slotting of the 304 stainless. And I moved to Kyocera end mills. I'm a big boy machine shop now. I bought end mills from a distributor,
Hmm.
and those have been working much better.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
Now,
then,
did that adjust your cycle time at all?
so this goes back into the experimenting, and I have spent a lot of time experimenting. I had one version where it only took about 4 minutes per coin, but I was breaking tools far too regularly. Like the tools would last maybe one coin. So that wasn't going to fly. And then I found another version that left the best finishes. There were no burrs or anything. And the tool never broke. Even like the cheaper Lakeshore Carbide ones, not a problem at all. And that took 30 minutes per side. And I was like, I was figuring that I could just kind of slowly bump up the speeds and get that faster. But then I also found out the way I was generating that tool path had some weird quirks where, like, if you imagine the pattern on my coins as like a series of city blocks where
Hmm.
there's, straight roads and there's buildings that are squares. Well, sometimes Fusion would decide for no reason to just cut corners. And instead of
Mm.
following the like roads, it would go through the middle of a building on a diagonal. It was
So, so was it not
bizarre.
lifting? Was it like a linking move and it wasn't lifting?
That's the strange thing. No, it was an actual cutting, like feed move.
Really?
Yes.
It was this a trace tool path?
So my original testing for this, and like the way I made the batch for my prototype of the month members, those were all using the trace toolpath. And
Hmm.
trace toolpath is great because all it cares about is your sketch. It will stick the nose of the tool on your sketch and follow it, and it'll do nothing else. So it doesn't get confused and thrown off by other things. It is very predictable, but it also isn't very flexible. It doesn't do things like ramping in. You can't ramp into your cuts, which is where I was breaking a lot of my tools. They weren't breaking during the cutting. They were breaking when they would plunge in, because that's all the
Mm-hmm.
trace will do. And then I found out that if you lie to a 2D contour, you can make a 2D contour basically into a trace. But the 2D contour was where it was deciding to just randomly cut corners.
So were you doing like a negative offset to get it the half the diameter of the tool?
Yes, you either I did it two different ways trying to troubleshoot this, and you can offset it by half the diameter of the tool, or you can just turn off compensation,
Oh yeah, that's
like
true. You
tool
could
comp.
do that. Yeah.
And it did not make a difference for it wanting to just cut across shapes, but I
Interesting.
it was weird. I can't explain it. I don't know.
Okay,
It was weird.
let me ask you another question, because I've run into situations where if I have if I'm doing a 2D contour and I have lines that get too close to each other, it'll do weird things. And so it could be that if you have any kind of corner overlapping deals, that it detects that it can't go there, and so it tries to go around it and makes another tool path. That's
You can
something that I've
turn that
run.
off. You can turn that off with a setting called safe distance.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
I
I
didn't know
did,
that.
because the first time I did it, it cut like 3 of the lines total. But when you turn on the or when you turn off safe distance, you set it to 0. It doesn't do that.
Hmm.
The other
Interesting.
weird thing is, like, it wouldn't do it on the same features every time. Like, it wasn't just like if there was a square in the randomly generated pattern, it would always cut across the square. Sometimes it would do it, and sometimes it wouldn't.
Are you selecting all of the sketches in one feature? Are you doing this all in one contour, or are you having to break it out?
So each coin gets its own sketch and its own toolpath. And for that toolpath, I select the entire sketch.
Hmm. Now, doing a 2D contour, even though you're running into this problem, can you do a boundary to where you're not air cutting because it's a
Yes,
2D
I can,
contour?
which is another advantage of the 2D contour instead of trace, is that you can trim it to the outside of the coin.
Okay.
And that cut it down from like 30 minutes to 25 minutes. But
Yeah.
it doesn't matter because like it was doing funky things. And
Hmm.
so I'm back to
Interesting.
trace, and I think the difference is the end mills are better. With the Lakeshore Carbide ones doing what I'm doing, they would break, and with the Kyocera ones, they seem to be working.
Okay. Did you think about using a high feed end mill? Because with the trace and a high feed, you're already taking such a shallow depth that your plunge, I don't think, would matter at that point.
Yeah, I did consider them. They're really hard to find in 1/16 of an inch. I'm sure they exist, but they're not a common tool.
Really? I would have thought that something like Harvey Tools would like have
They
those in
might.
spades.
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
just kind of a weird tool. Now, I could play with doing a shallower depth of cut and going faster, because right now I am
Mm-hmm.
going very slow. Um,
That's fair.
the the other weird thing. So when I first did this, when I was like back for my Patreon members, to avoid the whole breaking the tool when you plunge it down into the stainless steel problem, I did
Mm-hmm.
a lead in radius so that it would lead in. And that left some kind of weird artifacts on the sidewalls, but I figured out how to get rid of those.
Okay.
So I tried to turn on the lead-ins again, and it's weird because it's not actually generating the lead-in radiuses. It
Mm-hmm.
used to, but for some reason now Fusion just ignores the lead-in radius button, or at least for my toolpaths.
That's weird.
Yeah, I I probably should have turned Fusion off and back on again, because it might be that kind of bug. It's very bizarre.
I've had weird bugs with Fusion that I can't explain. Like specifically on the lathe,
Uh huh.
there's a bug that I have randomly where my part off tool will cut 20 thou off of where it's supposed to be in the
Mm-hmm.
wrong in a bad direction that makes your part scrap. and
Interesting.
um, I can delete the toolpath and remake it from scratch, and it'll still have the same problem. But if I delete the whole setup and start all over, it's fine.
Huh.
But I have to delete everything, or I have to save it as a copy or insert it into a new part file, and then it'll start working. And everything else works fine. All the other toolpaths are fine. I have no idea what's going on. And so what I end up doing in those situations is I have to trick it and go an extra 20 thou and to trick it into going farther than it's supposed to. And then
Interesting.
it hits right on every time.
Yeah,
So
that is weird.
I don't know what's up with that. And what really got me was this is one of the very first parts. It's those coins.
Mm-hmm.
They would always cut undersize, and that's why originally when you got the first batch, they were a little thinner.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was because of this problem, and I've been fighting it on these coins forever, and I could never figure it out. And so anytime I would do any other part, like for a job shop or for whatever reason, I would part off, and it would part off exactly what we're supposed to. And I'd go check my coins. I'm like, why are my coins not doing that? And eventually, I just got fed up and just put a negative offset in it because everything I did wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm still doing today. But all the other parts that I run, like if I'm running a customer's job and I run the part off tool, right on the money.
Interesting.
And I have no idea why.
Hmm. So I have a little tidbit for people they probably don't know about. So I was having some weird issues on the pens where when I was trying to cut, I think it was the tips of them. I don't remember. I was trying to cut some part and it was just giving me the most bonkers, like screwed up tool path ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I could not figure it out. And going backwards some, taking a step back and talking about how Fusion works. When you are using Fusion Cam and you are using one of the 3D toolpaths, the way Fusion works is it generates what's basically an STL of your 3D model. So it takes your
Okay.
solid model and it turns it into a triangulated mesh model.
Okay.
And then it uses that mesh model to generate your 3D toolpaths.
Yeah.
And just like you can tweak things when you're exporting like an STL, you can tweak that 3D model in terms of the number of triangles it has. If it has a bunch of triangles, it'll be smoother and closer to your actual 3D model shape. If it doesn't have very many triangles, it'll be much less processor intensive, which is why Fusion tends to lean that way. But
Okay.
those triangles can cause really weird artifacts in your cut. And a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the times those show up as air cutting. In this case, they were showing up as not cutting for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
by default, the size of the triangles is related to your tolerance value in Fusion. But that tolerance value also does a couple other things. And if you crank it down really far, then one, it makes your toolpath generation take much, much, much longer. And it also makes your toolpaths have a lot more points.
Yeah.
And you can kind of balance that out by turning on smoothing. But again, you get weird stuff going on when you crank down the tolerance and turn up smoothing.
Yeah.
However, there is a setting that you can get to only by right-clicking on your toolpath and hitting compare and edit. There's actually a good handful of settings that only exist in Fusion if you right-click on a toolpath and hit compare and edit. And
Really?
one of those options is smoothing, or not smoothing tolerance. It's I believe it's called triangulation tolerance or meshing tolerance. And you can crank that up separate from your tolerance setting, which will give you much nicer tool paths at the expense of some generation time because the in-process stock is now more complicated and it has to do more math on it. So if you're getting funky toolpaths and you don't know why, try cranking that up. Particularly, and it really only matters if you are working on small things. If you're working on something big, the meshing tolerance is fine. But Fusion doesn't really expect you to be working on something that's like a quarter of an inch or smaller. So like their system breaks down and you have to go in and manually change that meshing tolerance.
I could have used that like 6 months ago.
I'm
I
sorry
was
I'm
just,
late.
yeah, I was using I was making a part that was the size of like one of those tiny coin cell batteries that would go in
Hmm.
like a hearing aid or something. Um, and it had a surface that I had to do with a ball mill, and you could just see all of the individual
The
triangles.
facets.
Yeah, it looked horrible. And my step over was like, I think my step over was like half a thou because I was trying to get the most accuracy I could out of it, and it just no matter what I did, it still looked like junk
Yep.
because of
This
how
is
small
one
it
of the
was.
things that'll fix that.
Yeah,
Generally, if you crank down the meshing tolerance and crank up your smoothing, you'll get better tool paths. Obviously,
yeah,
within limits,
yeah,
but
yeah. And the other problem that you run into, or at least that I've run into in the few situations where I've done something like that, is that and I want to get this value from Tormach. So if anyone who works at Tormach is listening and can get me this answer, I would appreciate it. Is how
normal.
fast can, yeah. I'm sure you could call someone out. Um, how many lines of code per minute or per second can the Tormach controller read?
Mm,
Because if you put too many lines of code and it can't get to the next point, it's getting to the point before it can read the line of code. I've run into problems where it starts stuttering and bouncing around like
yes.
crazy because it can't read in lines of code fast enough. And there is a setting you can put in whenever you're setting up your machine where you can say how many lines of code can it read per minute, and it'll try to watch out for that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the thing. Um, there, I actually have never played with these on the Tormach, but Linux CNC, and I assume they got inherited into Pathpilot, has different smoothing settings so that it will change how it handles points and change its look ahead.
mm-hmm,
Um, so like if you had like a billion points, the Tormach is smart enough to smooth out those points into less points, or at least Linux CNC is. I assume again it's in Pathpilot. And you can change its accuracy setting where it needs to hit every point exactly, or it's allowed to round off those corners. But
mm-hmm,
I've never played with that on my machine.
yeah.
Um,
So,
oh, so going back to the hidden settings, there is another hidden setting that is very handy sometimes. If you are like, the issue generally manifests itself is like you're trying to select a line or a contour, and it's not wanting to select things the way that you think it should select them. Like it is stopping at a random point, and you think it should be able to select the whole loop, but it's only like selecting part of the
mm-hmm,
loop, or you think it should be a loop and it's not seeing it as a loop. There's another setting called, I believe it's contour tolerance, and often that is well, it's either too tight or too loose depending on what the problem is. Normally for me it's too tight, and if you loosen it up a little bit, like if you're working with kind of nasty geometry, that setting is sometimes too tight, and if you loosen it up a little bit, the like contour selection will behave a little bit better.
okay.
So that's another good setting that you need to know, that people should know about.
I haven't really run into that one too much, but there has been a handful of instances where I could see that setting being the problem that I'm fighting. Um, but I can
I
usually
ran
get
into
around it by forcing it to um, go. And I just dropped something that I really hope I can find.
I think what it does when that setting is wrong is it tries to add lead-ins. Like you'll have like a two lines meeting in a V, and your infusion will be like, instead of just cutting that as one contour, I'm going to lead in and then lead out and then lead back in again and then lead out again.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, which is not what you want. Whereas it should just be a V. So hidden settings. Who knew?
Yeah, which I have seen some really cool tips on Saunders talking about how you can select multiple toolpaths from multiple like you can select the whole tree and you could like turn off flood coolant or turn it on.
Oh yeah, I do that.
All
Do you
to,
not do that? I do that all the time.
I do not. I did not even realize you could do that.
Oh yeah, you can select as many toolpaths as you want. Right click, hit compare and edit, and then bulk change them.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, that's a great tip. It's kind of like when I learned that you could type like into the MDI on a Tormach, you can type in
Mm,
the word find and then
yeah,
some text, and it'll search for that text in your. Do you know how long I went without knowing about that feature?
I learned about that like the first week, and I use it all the time. I use it all the time.
I didn't know about it on my first Tormach at all. I only found out about it on my new one, and
That's
even then, I
funny.
think I had it for like 3 months.
That's hilarious. No, I use that all the time. That and I always did you know that you can click up and down on the keypad and it'll pull up previous commands?
Yes, that I do know and do use a lot.
Yeah, because I have one command that I use all the time, and it's go to my XY00 so I can make sure my
Mm,
origin's in the right spot.
yep,
Um, with like a feed of like 100, I think is what I have it set to. But like I always have that in like my top 10 most recent used commands because I always do that to verify everything.
I broke a probe tip like that because I wasn't thinking, and I typed go to Z or like you type like G0 X0 Y0, and my brain was just like Z0, and I broke a
Yeah,
probe tip.
that is why I always use that default command. So I
Yeah.
always know that I'm not going to do that. So.
Yeah, using a G1 with a slower feed is probably a good idea too.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't remember if it's a G1 or a G0, but I do have the feed, so it might be a G1 because I have my feed set to 100, so it's not like a rocket ship.
Lightning.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
still fast, but it's not crazy. So, but this has turned into like a
Yeah.
tips list
Any
for
other
people.
Tormach tips?
Um, let's see here. Do you leave your probe connected to your machine all the time?
Yes, 100% of the time.
Okay. Where do you
I have also
store it?
broken probe tips that way.
Where do you store it?
I have a 3D printed little holder inside the machine.
Okay. I have
Is that what?
something similar.
Okay.
So I have it on the back wall, and my dad was actually the one who solved it for us. He because I was talking about how I needed a place to stick this thing, and he had a giant magnet, and then
Mm-hmm.
he just ran a screw into some PVC piping um, through the magnet, and then
Mm.
I just stick it to the back wall, and the probe sits inside the PVC tubing, so and it protects it.
Yeah, I riveted mine on, but same thing.
Yeah, same basic concept. So um, one of these days I'll get like a wireless one because I'd love to have it in the actual turret.
Yep. Yeah, I would
So
I would love to have a probe in my turret. I would use that all the time.
yeah, I would too to double check features and things. Um, but I will say on the topic of things, something I brought up a little while ago was um, the X uh, ball screw compensation deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's been phenomenal. I feel like my
Has it?
parts are coming out. I feel like my parts are coming out better than they ever have, especially large parts.
Huh.
Uh,
Well, that's
so
good.
um, after doing more and more testing, I'm hitting my numbers like spot on. Like before, where I was cutting a couple thou off, always in my X, pretty much spot on now. So
I
within
I definitely need to go through and adjust my ball screws, or
or
no, excuse me, adjust my preload on my bearings and get some backlash out of mine. But I may take a look at that too. We need
yeah,
to find somebody to grind some glass rods for us, or at least measure it very
yeah,
precisely some glass rods.
yeah. I would like
Calling all
that.
listeners.
Yeah, that would be very very beneficial. I just having a known value that's a large like 6 to 10 inches in length.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully less than the maximum length you can do in the y-axis, so you can check your x, y, and z. Um,
Yes.
so it'd have to be like 10 inches,
Yep.
and then that would allow you to check all three axes over a pretty good distance. Um, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh, I had another interesting issue with the coins. which is something that I knew about theoretically, but had not actually experienced yet. So I was using some side lock tool holders from Maritool. I use them a lot, mostly because the coolant access is very good, and also they're not expensive. And but I've mostly used them with 1/8" tools and the high feed mills that I used on the carabiners. Actually, the vast majority of my usage of them has been on the high feed mills that I used on my carabiners. And with like the stuff I was doing, I never really cared about run out on them.
Mm-hmm.
But when I switched to doing it with these 1/16" tools in stainless steel with little tiny feed per tooths, it turns out it matters.
Yeah.
And I was playing with it, and the tool holder that I have, or excuse me, the tools that I have, the shank on them was 4/10 undersized. And so I was wondering why I was breaking so many tools, and so I put a tool in the spindle and stuck my Mitutoyo tenths indicator on it and started indicating it in. Do you want to guess how much run out I had in my tool?
I'm gonna go with either 4 or 8/10.
It was 4/10.
Oh, okay.
So, which I think makes sense because it's on the radius or the I don't know. Whatever it was 4/10, and they lined up, which I assume that math works out. And so I moved the tools to one of my nicest tool holders, which is I have some Technics tool holders with Technics collets and an RegoFix collet nuts. And I got sub 10th run out with those. And that has definitely made a big difference.
Yeah. I'm ashamed to admit that I haven't never checked tool run out, especially in my smaller tools, but I am suspicious that tools that have lasted a long time and then I change and then they finally do break and I put a new tool in and it breaks like right after is probably a run out issue.
Yeah.
So
it's not something that I check often, but like I was going through the troubleshooting steps and just making sure I was isolating variables. And sure enough, it never mattered on my like the high feed mills because I run the high feed mills at like 5 thou per tooth. And so 4/10 doesn't really make a difference when you're running 5 thou. But when you're running like 2 thou inch per tooth, or excuse me, 2/10 inch per tooth, that 4/10 of run out is a big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
So I thought about getting some like hydraulics or shrink fits, but they cost money.
I really would like to get some higher end tooling and just see how big a difference it makes in the Tormach because I'm still running all the basic Tormach generic ER collets. That's pretty much all I use.
And those tool holders are great for the price. Like they really are not bad at all.
Like, no, I have done really good work with those so far. Like I am not complaining in the slightest. But I would be interested to see the difference, and I bet there would be a measurable difference, maybe in tool life or in surface finish or in both.
Yep. The tool rep that I bought the endmills from was trying to sell me on some big Jashoa tool holders. It was like, a couple of those would probably cost more than my machine. I think I'm good, but I'll get some. I'll get some Maritool hydraulics or shrink fits or something.
It doesn't hurt that most of the time when my tool breaks, it has nothing to do with the wear on the tool.
Yes.
So
Same.
So for that reason, investing in better tool holders for better tool life, I don't think is going to affect me that much yet.
Yeah.
As I'm getting my settings dialed in better and better, like on that last job I did for a customer where I had like over 100 stainless steel parts. I don't think I broke a single tool other than drill bits. Like drill bits was the only thing that I really broke. All my other tools were fine. I think I did eventually change one end mill, and I think it's a tool that actually wore out just from how much I used it. So I think it was like one of the very first tools that just wore out, and like you could still use it, but it didn't sound as good, and the cuts weren't as good. And so I just changed it out for a fresh tool. And like when you looked at the edges, they weren't destroyed, but
Hmm.
they looked worn. And
Yep.
so it was one of the very first times I think I've actually legitimately had a tool wear out. And I think that was the only tool I replaced other than a whole bunch of drill bits because there was a lot of drilling in that job. And like I said before, I had a lot of uncoated carbide drills.
Yep.
So yeah, that was not fun. So yeah. See here, what else do we have going on? I did reach out to that guy with the laser plate, the
Uh
laser
huh.
engraving plates again. I just wanted to touch base and because he was working on some prototypes, and I just wanted to see how the prototypes were, and if he needed some plates for those prototypes. And he basically wrote back, everything's good, don't worry, we're working on some stuff. But he basically told me uh, a month to a month and a half before he's going to place an order. But
Okay.
he's like, I am going to order from you. You have the job. Don't worry. I was like,
Okay.
I'm not worrying. I'm just checking in because I hadn't heard from you in a while.
Yep.
So, but
So you're gonna buy a
he get,
laser?
huh?
So you're gonna buy a
My
laser?
when I see a PO,
Okay.
yeah, it's gonna happen. Um,
Nice.
and so we'll get a second laser, um, and we're definitely going to do that. So, and we're ramping up our gun stuff. We got a gun show happening next month or middle of
Ooh.
next month. So we've started down the road of we've got 4 or 5 guns that we're getting ready for the show that we're actually going to sell. So they're going to be for sale rather than just promoting our services.
Mm.
So I don't know if I told the story on the stream, but my middle brother, who's in a different state, he was working at a automotive store, and the guy that owned the store, for fun, got his FFL and started selling guns out of his store. And when I was there, I was visiting with him. He started out with about $2,000 and bought a couple guns. And he every time he sells a gun, he doesn't take any of the money out. He just buys more guns and puts them in his.
Yeah.
Um, and he hasn't taken a dime out of it because it's for him it's a side hobby. He mainly works on cars, but he's got so many people coming in and out, and he loves guns. He's just like, I'll put them for sale and see if people buy them. Well, he's up to over $50,000 worth of guns.
Okay.
Um, and he just kind of said, I could sell out and make some good cash off of this. He says, or, at the end of the day, he said the car stuff pays all my bills. Like I don't need this for extra cash flow, but if I ever wanted to just close this down, I got myself $50,000 worth of guns for $2,000.
Yep. That's a pretty good deal.
So he's like, it's just a win-win for me. He's like, it's just a side hobby at this point. So we're going to try to do the same. We're going to try to take all the guns that we sell and reinvest it, and not take any of that cash out, and just try to get a decent size so that people that come in and view our shop have something they can walk out with if they want to.
Yep.
So, and we almost had that happen. We had a guy that was visiting, and he was looking at our guns, and he didn't have enough cash on him, or I'm pretty sure he would have bought one.
Mm.
So I think it's
So you need to
definitely
install an ATM.
yeah. Yeah. So
Mm.
he didn't want to get out his credit card, and if I had kept him talking, I might have got him to pull out his credit card, but he wanted to pay cash, so he walked out without one. But he's going to be back.
Yep.
He had that look. So
I have been eyeballing a second spindle for my shop, or at least considering it.
ooh,
I
do tell.
I have this problem. Like I'm doing production right now on the coins, and granted, at the time I was using the mental calculus of these tool paths where it was going to take an hour per coin, the half an hour per side. So like I was still earlier, and I was going, man, this is going to take me like a week or a week and a half to make all these coins, and I need to get these Kickstarters or the carabiners prototype for the Kickstarter because I have designs now. I just need machine time to prototype them. And it's like, this would be so much easier and faster if I had a second spindle sitting around that I could use for prototyping. Something like a 440. Like I wouldn't need a tool changer. I guess it would be
Mm-hmm.
nice if it was like a 770 MX that had the same BT30 tool holders. But I was even thinking about like a Shapeoko. It's like I really
Yeah.
need something so I can keep prototyping while I'm doing some production. But I mean, second spindles cost money. In fact, they cost
Yeah.
lots of money. So
Yeah. I was gonna say, if you moved all your production work somewhere else, you
yeah.
wouldn't need a second spindle.
If I do that though, I need to stop designing dumb things like the coins that would cost a lot of money for any other shop to make.
That's fair.
especially if they do end up taking an hour per coin.
Yeah. Yeah. That's valid. That's valid criticism. So
But like for the carabiner Kickstarter coming up, I don't intend on making those myself.
yeah.
So
Yeah. You'll if you're not wanting to do production, um, then investing in a second spindle could be detrimental in the long run.
yeah, if I don't know, again, it just kind of depends on how the business goes. Like
I
if
think you will. I think you do need a second spindle personally, um, and I do think um, doing your own production um, could be very beneficial. And I mean, there's a lot of people that do it, but the path that you're going down, um, getting more and more products out, it's going to be hard to keep up with. Just having one of
yeah,
you right now, even if you had a second spindle today, like if you could magically wave your wand and have a second spindle, I don't think you could keep them both turning um, effectively.
yeah, it it comes down to the problem of I need a second spindle sometimes.
Yeah.
There's 1 or 2 days a week where I need that second spindle, unless I'm doing like the carabiner production where those ran for 3 weeks or whatever. Like, but I don't need a second spindle 48 weeks out of the year.
Yeah. And see,
So
we have a similar problem where we have two machines, and I almost always have work that I can do on both those machines, but I almost I don't always have enough time to get both machines up and running. Um, even and there's two of us, so
yeah, the thing that you have to think about though is like my machines are how do I word this? My machines are not the bottleneck. So buying a second one doesn't make sense from that point of view. However, my time in like the design pipeline, like that is the bottleneck. And
hmm
having a second machine could speed that up a lot.
yeah,
So like if
yeah,
you if your goal is the design bottleneck, the product design or the product design process, the product design pipeline, like having a second machine would facilitate some flow.
yes, for
Um
sure. And that's where a 440 would be really nice for that kind
yeah.
of work. Because I've thought about getting a 440 multiple times just to have, because there are times when we're running jobs on our main spindle. And that's why I really want to upgrade to a big machine and keep our current Tormach as a prototype
Yes.
machine. Like that is my ultimate goal is to get a. I don't know. It's like these days I'm leaning more towards like a Doosan of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I've liked the Haas, um, things like the Doosan are they're just a whole nother animal. Um, and like I've seen the difference going from the Tormach to a Haas. Granted, it's a lathe versus a mill, so there's that kind of a difference. But then I've also, because I've gotten used to lathes some, and I look at my Haas, I go to my local machine shop in town, and they got a bunch of Mazaks, and those things make my Haas look like a Tormach.
Yeah.
Um, so so I think having a bigger, if I'm gonna make the jump to a bigger machine, and the only reason I would do a Doosan is because price wise, I can get like a VF2 um, versus the Doosan. What was it? The SM or SV 4100, something like that. I forget what, but they were running a promotion for a while, and I was thinking of really good thoughts about it. Where basically they were cost competitive to a Haas VF2 SS. They were the same price or cheaper. Um,
Yep.
than a Haas VF2SS. And I was like, ooh, that would be, if I could do that, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. The other thing I've considered is a lathe. Um, but again, I have the problem where like I don't want a big lathe and I don't want a itty bitty tiny lathe. And so I was thinking about the Slant Pro, though I was just reminded of these GT27 lathes. I'm not sure.
I've
Have you ever seen one of those?
I've seen so many videos of guys talking about those versus the Slant Pro, and they say the Slant Pro's junk. Get this.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of those types of videos, and I don't know much about it. Now that being said, would you be interested in a used machine?
Um, I mean, yeah, I would go used machine if I could. Like,
Because there's a guy around here who I'm decently good friends with. It's more of a guy that I became acquainted with through the other machine shop.
mm-hmm,
He does scientific equipment,
mm-hmm.
and he started out with a Tormach and then moved up to a Haas mini mill. And he told us that if he ever sells his Haas mini mill, he's going to give us first shot at it.
Okay.
But he had which I need to talk to him because he's moving shops. It'd be interesting if he ever decides that he does want to sell it. We could get it for a good price. Anyways, off topic. He had I think he had one of those, or something very similar to it
Oh, really? Yeah.
as a lathe. And I don't know if I don't remember if he was getting rid of it because I think he was talking about upgrading. And I can reach out to him for you and see if he still has it and what he would let it go for. Because I know he got it used, and it works fine. It's a little older one, but I don't think it would be very much if he wanted to get rid of it.
So, if you were a good friend, what you'd probably do is not send him a message and then tell me that it was way more money than I'm willing to afford, because that's probably the right choice for me. But I don't know it.
I mean,
I don't need a lathe. I don't need a lathe. I don't need a lathe. At least not yet.
well, I mean, at
I
least
want a
I
lathe,
could.
but I don't need a lathe. But I
Yeah,
want one.
well, yeah,
But I can make all kinds of justifications for it. But
yeah, I
but I
know.
want one.
If you get serious about it, I can reach out to him and get info on it and see if that's something that he's interested in, and it might be something that he's not going to want to do for a little while, but I can at least put put a bug in his ear and be like, hey, if you ever do, I might have a buyer that's interested.
I mean, I
Um,
wouldn't mind if you poked him for me.
okay, I'll see if I can poke him.
Worst case
And get
scenario, I buy a lathe.
yeah. So, but we'll see. I need to reach out to him anyways. There's this in the middle of the country. There's this massive general store that's been there as long as I can remember. Um, and he just bought it, and
Oh,
so
really?
I've been meaning to bug him anyways because um, it would actually be a really good place to move my shop someday if I
Mm,
ever wanted to. And it's way too big for what he wants it for.
yep.
So, and it's got a whole parking lot and a front area that would be perfect for a gun shop with enough room on the back for a CNC shop. So I
Yeah.
could have the best of both worlds. So I do need to reach out to him because, um, and see if that's something he would be interested in from that perspective. So
I need to reach out to Pocket NC and see if they'll let me play with one of their machines for a little while. One of their new
yeah,
ones.
what is going on with that? And like, I haven't seen anything on their like prototype machines or beta machines or.
They sent out an email not too long ago that was like, "Hey, if you're interested in one of these, send us an email." I I don't think they're ready for production yet. They just bought that big, huge Mori. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
saw that, and that was to make parts for this machine, as I understand it. And I think they're
Oh,
still
okay,
kind of getting that thing into the swing of production.
gotcha. Yeah, I'll be excited when that thing is done. I think it's going to be a sweet little machine. Um,
I I would love to have that as my production machine, and then my Tormach for prototyping.
yeah, yeah, I really would like to have that just to begin to add 5-axis capabilities to my shop. I would almost be tempted to get that before I got like a bigger machine, but
Hmm.
it depends on the type of work I get. But that would be
Yes.
different enough that I think I could outcompete a lot of the shops around here, that because I don't know very many shops that actually have true 5-axis around here.
Yep.
And even with the machine of that small caliber, I think there's enough work around here that if I said, "Hey, I have 5-axis capabilities," um, my door would be busted down,
Yep.
regardless of the machine.
Yeah.
So,
Though there's also the Haas UMC 350.
yeah, is that one for sale yet?
I
Did
think
they even?
so. If not, it will be soon.
But even
Um,
that's going to be a $100,000 plus machine.
yeah, but
Uh,
it's quite a bit bigger. Did I call it a 350 or 360? It's a 350. Um,
oh, they do have it on here.
part of
350
my
H
problem, part of my problem is I can't fit like anything into this shop.
high speed 5-axis.
Uh,
Huh.
oh yeah, starting at like 115,000.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I'm
it's a
gonna have
wee
to look
bit
at
more
that.
expensive.
Yeah,
But
that's like double the price of probably what these other ones are going to be.
yeah. So I need to talk to Pocket and see, because at very least, I think they are letting people come out to Montana to play with their existing machine, and I
Yeah,
would love to do that.
yeah.
Plus, Montana's pretty, and I don't mind going to Montana.
I'm gonna get distracted looking at machines. That's a
Yep.
dangerous thing to
Sorry.
do.
I'm I'm tired, so this is probably like I'm primed for distraction.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Uh,
Is there anything else going on? I've had a lot of talks with a lot of different people. Um, and I'm just waiting for some quotes to come in at this point.
mhm.
I did get some design work from a good friend though. It's actually my old boss from years past. He started
Okay.
his own company. Actually, okay, I will back up a little bit. So when I first got out of college and got my first job, I shared an office with two other guys,
Uh huh.
and we were all working at the same place. Um, both of them left before I did, and they went to different companies, and then they left from those companies, and they kind of bounced around for a little bit. And then when I left, I started my own company, and now both of them have left their jobs and started companies,
Have I?
and all within a pretty within a
Uh,
year of each. Like, I've only been doing those for about a year and a half, and they both have started theirs within that time frame. So, um, but I was the first, and I like to joke with both of them that I started a trend.
yep.
But they both started design companies, of just straight engineering design. So, um, it'll be interesting to see. One of them, I think, has got a really good setup. The other one is, I think, still in the process of getting set up. Um,
Mhm.
but it'll be interesting, and I'm glad because I'm a little different than them too, because I have CNC machines and they do not. So
Yeah.
my work does not overlap with them, and it can create a good synergy with some of them as well. So because
Yeah.
I can do the design work to help with overflow, and then um, hopefully they can talk to the companies that they're doing design work from, and they're like, hey, if you need parts made, I know a guy. So,
Mhm.
which I think has already happened once or twice. So that's nice.
So I'm totally on track here and not being distracted at all. But there is a Willman on eBay for $13,000.
Is like the bid due in like 4 months?
Um, no, that's the buy it now price. It's a wee bit dirty. It
A
may not even
Williman?
be barf fed. I can't tell. It's very dirty.
That can be good.
I would love to have like a weird machine in my shop that no one else has.
Yeah. Although,
And
didn't Saunders just get his? He's got a Williman now.
yes, which I'm super excited to see what he does with it.
Yeah.
But
I'm hoping he produces more videos than Grimsmo. Which,
yeah,
by the
I
way,
know.
I know neither one of them have ever probably listened to this podcast, but on the off chance that they ever do listen to this podcast, I'm going to say this. Grimsmo, I want to see some more videos out of you. I don't know what's going on, but I love your freaking videos and you don't post anymore.
Yeah. If you listen to the last bomb, he mentioned something about a employee wanting to move up into the media position. And so it kind of sounds like they lost their video person.
That could be. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched them or I haven't listened to the most recent. Um, but I have listened to like the second or third. So
We should probably wrap this up. I'm just looking for Wilmans on the
yeah,
internet.
I'm getting distracted too. Anything else going on with you, or is that it? Like, what's your next big thing?
Next big thing is finishing up the coins and prototyping the carabiners. I'm hoping to have 3 different carabiner designs for this next Kickstarter. I have 2 of those designs done, or at least ready to be prototyped, and then I need to start on the third one.
Gotcha.
Ooh, and should we give a little hook to get people to come back next episode where I can reveal secrets?
Yeah, go for
I
it.
think I have a unique carabiner design that nobody's done before.
Ooh,
Actually, I'm almost certain. I'm sure someone's done some variant of it at some point throughout the history, but
this
I
is
don't think
something I
anyone's
don't
done
even
my
know.
specific implementation.
This is something I don't even know. That's
It
exciting.
has 2 different flexures
2 flexures.
that do different things in different
Really?
places. Yeah.
Hmm.
And only one of
I'm
them is
gonna.
for opening and closing the carabiner. It's not just like the same flexure twice.
Okay. Can I ask a probing question, or do we want to wait till next week?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, what
Okay.
does it? Go for it.
Okay. Does the second flexure have anything to do with keeping the first flexure from opening?
No. Though that probably would be a good idea with my track record.
Okay. I was wondering if it was like something that you came up with to help with that. That would be cool.
It does
But
not.
okay. Okay, I'm out of ideas now.
Okay. Good, because stop guessing because you'll probably get it right.
So, I guess I'll take us out. For those of you who've been listening to us, seems like more and more that we do this towards the end, it kind of devolves into randomness, and so
I'm really tired.
we appreciate you guys hanging on to the end. Please like and share and tell all your friends about the podcast. And this is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Design the Everything.
Bye.